Good afternoon. Happy Wednesday. It's time for another exciting edition of Reading with Mr. Eble. We're going to continue on with Watchdog. Again, it's a Name That book. We're going to be reading chapters 5 and 6 today. Based on the governor's announcement from yesterday, you will get to tune in to Reading with Mr. Eble for a whole another month. So I know you're excited about that. So we'll get on started with chapter 5 of Watchdog. It was too dark to see Daisy, but occasionally Vic heard her steel feet scrabbling on the concrete nearby. As they got close to the dump, Daisy showed up in front of them and made the blooping sound again. Tara stopped walking. "Danger," she said. Vic closed his eyes for a second, frustrated. They had to work. They had to. "Let's get close enough to see. If anyone's there, we'll leave," he said. Tara clearly didn't like that plan, but she followed along as Vic approached the dump. He pressed close to the buildings, so it would be harder for someone to spot him from the dump if anyone was there at this hour. In the light of a half moon hanging in the sky above the tenements, the dump was silent. Even the flies were asleep. That was a bonus to working nights that hadn't even occurred to Vic. "Let's go," Vic said. He climbed into the trash. The darkness did nothing to lessen the stench, unfortunately. When he crested the mound, he saw the dump was now divided with ropes into square sections, like an archaeological site. Weird. He picked a section at random, stepped over the rope, and handed the flashlight to Tara. "Why don't you hold the flashlight while I dig?" he asked. Tara turned on the flashlight and aimed it at the ground. Vic got to work, wondering what was going on here. What was the point of roping the dump off like that? "What sort of parts are we looking for to make more robots like Daisy?" Vic's words were partially drowned out by Daisy, who'd started blooping again. Vic surveyed the dump, but it was silent and empty. Oh no. No, it wasn't. Vic's legs felt like they were turning to liquid. Tiny was racing across the dump toward them, his enormous T-Rex head bobbing. "Run!" Tara took off and Vic followed. As they raced down the hill, Tara lost her footing and tumbled forward. She stuck out her hands to break her fall, landed halfway down the hill and slid, an avalanche of garbage cascading along with her. Vic rushed after her and helped her up. The watchdog stepped out in front of them, making a low, rolling mechanical growl. Its knees were bent, ready to leap. Vic froze. "Stand still," he said. Tara buried her face in Vic's shoulder. "I don't like this. I don't like that noise." Vic grasped Tara's shoulders. "You have to stay calm. We need to stay still and not upset it." "I can't help it. You know I can't help it," Tara said. She was trembling all over. "You have to, Tara. Think of a way. You're smart. You can figure this out." Vic didn't know enough about watchdogs to know what might provoke it to attack. It looked ready to spring, that terrible growl going on, its beady black eyes locked on them. Watchdogs were built in people's garages and basements, so each was unique and had unique programming. Back in his past life, Vic had thought they were so cool. He had read all about them on the internet. He didn't think they were cool now. "Maybe I can put it off until later," Tara said. "Good idea. As soon as we're home, you can let it out." "Okay, I'll try." While Tara struggled to hold off her meltdown, Vic tried backing them up. The pitch of the watchdog's growl grew higher, and it took a warning step forward. Daisy was about a dozen feet behind the watchdog, pacing, like she was trying to figure out what to do. What could she do? The thing would bite her in half if she got near it. "We're okay," Vic squeezed Tara's arm. "We'll just stay right here. That man will come and call it off." "He's a turd. He hurt Daisy." Vic couldn't argue with that. Even if Tara had replaced Daisy's leg in no time at all. What would he do if he found them back here again? Probably sick his watchdog on them. Vic tried to think of something else to do, but there was nothing. If he still owned a phone that worked, he could try calling for help. Surely the police came if you flat out called them. Unless someone wandered by and he could get them to call 911. He was out of luck. All they could do was sit in the trash and hope Stripe would set them free with another warning. "Daisy, go home," Tara called. "Wait there." Daisy ran off. No use risking Stripe tearing off another limb, or maybe her head this time. As they settled into the trash, Tara pressed close to Vic. Mom had told him most kids with autism didn't like to be touched or held. Not Tara. When she was scared, she went overboard the other way, pretty much climbing into your lap and squeezing you until you couldn't breathe. A vehicle engine woke Vic. He wasn't surprised Tara had fallen asleep after staying up all night the night before. but he couldn't believe he'd managed to sleep with that massive, lantern-jawed, razor-toothed watchdog standing 2 steps away. The van door slammed. Stripe was carrying a cup of coffee. He didn't seem surprised to see them. In fact, he seemed almost happy. "Unbelievable," he said. He patted the watchdog's massive head before pulling out his phone and making a call. "Remember the hip socket designer? Yeah, she's right here." After a few minutes' conversation, Stripe put away the phone and smiled at Vic and Tara. "I set aside the whole morning to find you, and here you are. Now I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. Maybe I'll go to the movies." "Why did you want to find us?" Vic didn't know whether to be relieved or scared. Stripe was taking their trespass much better than Vic had expected. Stripe took a swig of coffee, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "The boss wants to talk to you. Well, to her, actually." He gestured at Tara. "Be polite. Call her Miss Alba, or ma'am." The boss wanted to talk to Tara about Daisy's hip design. That didn't sound so bad. Tara could tell Miss Alba, or ma'am, everything she wanted to know, and then they could go home. They still have the problem of what they were going to eat today, but at least they'd be free from Tiny and these people. Before long, a black Maserati Air pulled up to the edge of the dump, and an Asian woman stepped out. She was dressed in white leather with a flowing red robe that nearly reached the filthy ground. She looked like a rock star and strutted like one as she stopped just short of the trash, glanced at Tiny, and said, "Off, go." The watchdog trotted away. "Which of you is my hip designer?" The woman folded her arms and studied Vic, then Tara. Vic had never felt so filthy and smelly as he did in the presence of this clean, brilliantly dressed woman. Tara raised her hand. "I am. I'm the hip designer." "Come here." Vic followed Tara down the hill of trash as Miss Alba stepped closer. "What's your name, honey?" "Tara." "Tara, ma'am," Stripe corrected her, his arms folded across his chest. Tara looked at Stripe, her eyebrows pinched in confusion. "Well, Tara, how would you like to work for me?" Miss Alba asked. It took a moment for the words to sink in. Work? A paycheck? They could get an apartment, eat 3 meals a day. "You'd have to hire me too," Vic said. Miss Alba gave Vic an annoyed look. "And why is that?" "I'm her assistant, and her twin brother. She has to stay close to me. She has autism." "That's true. I'm severely autistic," Tara chimed in, "but I don't mind. It's probably the reason I can design hip joints so well." "Fine, you can both work." Miss Alba turned to Stripe. "Pack them up. I'll meet you at the shop." "Let's go," Stripe said, and he gestured toward the open hatch of his beat-up white van. There were no seats. They sat on the floor beside a stack of cardboard boxes. "Any luck?" Miss Alba asked Stripe as they waited. She was looking up at the dump. "Not yet, but we'll find it," Stripe said. Miss Alba kicked an aluminum can lying beside her foot. Her glistening high-heeled boots looked like they were made of polished silver. Those idiots. She headed to her sports car without a glance back. "Tiny, up!" Stripe slapped the rear bumper of the van. The watchdog climbed in. The back of the van sank under his weight. Vic and Tara scurried deeper into the van until they were pressed against the wall that separated the back of the van from the seats. Clinging to the sides to keep from sliding when the van turned, they eyed the watchdog as it lay in front of the door, its massive head raised, beady black eyes staring back at them. "I don't like this at all," Tara said, glancing around. Vic swallowed and tried to fight off a growing sense that he'd made a mistake. "It's okay. We work for them now. They won't hurt us. We can save up some money." Except they made watchdogs that hurt people. He'd temporarily forgotten that. He'd been too busy thinking about the money they'd make. Chapter 6. When the rear doors swung open, they were in the parking lot of a body shop strewn with rusted-out vehicle parts and cars with flat tires or no tires at all, lined up against a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. Just as Vic turned away, he caught a glimpse of movement on the roof of the donut shop beyond the fence. He turned back and studied the spot, but there was nothing there. "This way." Stripe pointed toward an open, rolled-up door. "You know, on second thought, I don't think we're old enough to be working here," Vic said. "Maybe we'll just go home." Stripe shook his head. "Sorry, kid. You'll have to discuss that with Miss Alba. I don't think she'll be happy about you going back on your word." Vic stayed beside the van, with Tara pressed close to him. "Believe me, Tara would be the worst employee you've ever had." Tara nodded in agreement. "Plus, it's against the law. You have to be 16 to work." Stripe laughed at that. "Don't worry. We have special permission from the mayor. There are lots of kids your age and younger working for us. Now come on, let's go." Vic's heart was tripping wildly as Stripe led them through the body shop to a back staircase, down to a huge, low-ceilinged basement. 30 or more people were working under bright lights, bent over parts, operating machines, working blowtorches. They were building watchdogs. Most were kids, although one man was at least 80. Miss Alba was waiting on the shop floor. She led them across the grease-stained concrete to a dim office that stank of cigarettes. A big woman with dyed red hair was working at a computer while smoking. "Dixie, I've got a couple new workers for you," Miss Alba said, and she put her hand on Tara's head. "This one is a whiz. Put her in R&D. Dixie grunted. "What's wrong with her? She looks weird." Vic braced himself for Tara's outrage at being called weird, but she only stood there, arms dangling loosely, her whole body trembling. "She has autism." Vic's voice sounded shaky and timid to his own ears. "Yeah, whatever." Dixie's chair screeched as she stood. On her way over, she plucked 2 black tubes from a glass jar. Miss Alba reached down and grabbed Vic's wrist. Then she grabbed Tara's with her other hand. "What are you doing?" Vic took an instinctive step back. "Just hold still." Dixie was chewing gum, working it furiously. She set one of the tubes down. Vic tried to pull away. "Hold still or it'll hurt like crazy and we'll have to do it all over again." Dixie lifted the tube and jabbed it against his arm. It felt like a huge wasp was stinging him, the stinger sinking deep and staying for a long time as Vic grunted, his jaw clamped tight against the pain. Finally she pulled it free, and he realized it was some sort of syringe. "See, that wasn't so bad." "What did you do? What was that?" Vic pressed his hand over his arm. The spot was still throbbing and burning. Dixie set down the spent syringe and then quickly picked up the other as Tara tried to pull free from Miss Alba. "Hold still." She pressed it to Tara's arm as Stripe held Vic back. Tara shrieked in fear and pain as a shot stung her arm. When Miss Alba and Stripe let them go, Tara threw her arms around Vic, and Vic hugged his twin sister fiercely, rocking her gently. "We're okay. It's over now. It's over." Dixie and Miss Alba stood over them, waiting. "Move away from the door," Dixie said, grasping the knob. Vic moved Tara. Dixie opened the door and called, "Tiny, come." Vic heard Tiny's metal claws on the concrete floor before he saw them, his chrome body glistening in the light, filling the doorway. Dixie looked down at Vic and Tara. "What we injected into you was a tracer. If you ran away, Tiny will know just where you ran. He'll come after you and drag you back here. Do you understand?" Over Dixie's shoulder, Vic saw a window high up on the wall. It had heavy steel bars across it. Vic wanted to tell this woman that they couldn't get away with pulling kids off the street in broad daylight, but the truth was, they could. No one would be looking for them. Dixie curled a figure toward Tara. "Come on, I'll show you where you'll be working." Vic leaped to his feet. "We have to stay together. She can't be on her own." Dixie scowled at him. "She won't be on her own. I mean, she has to be with me or she'll lose it." Every word Vic uttered seemed to make Dixie angrier. "You know what your sister's problem is? I'll give you a hint. It's not autism. Her problem is she's a sissy. She needs to toughen up. Now's as good a time as any to start." Miss Alba nodded briskly. "She'll get used to it. We need you doing other things." As soon as Dixie bent and pulled Tara to her feet, Tara started wailing. Vic tried to follow her, but Miss Alba held him back. "You don't understand. She can't control it. I have to stay with her, or she won't be able to work for you." "That's enough. Let's go." Miss Alba led Vic to the main floor, to a tall, gangly, dark-skinned girl who looked like she was Vic's age, maybe a year older. Miss Alba told the girl to show him what to do, then headed for the exit without another word. Nothing Vic said about Tara got a second glance. When he followed her to the door, protesting, Stripe stood in his path. "Back to your station, kid." It was agonizing to hear Tara's wails and not be able to help her. He went back to the table with the tall girl and stared at the door where they'd taken Tara. "There's nothing you can do right now," the girl said. "You need to pretend to work at least." Her name was East, and she said she'd been in the basement for 3 months. Vic had picked up enough of the basics of DIY robotics from Tara that they could talk in low voices, while Vic pretended he was getting the hang of things. It was hard to concentrate with Tara wailing in another room. "All Miss Alba cares about is getting rich, like private jets and bodyguards rich," East was saying as she worked on a spine. Her curly hair was pulled back away from her face with a rubber band. "She thinks watchdogs are her ticket." "She thinks she's going to get rich enough to fly in private jets, making watchdogs? They aren't just some hobby thing people do in their garages anymore." East wiped sweat from her forehead with the grease-stained back of her wrist. "Gangs are buying them up, even some regular people looking to protect themselves from gangs." A bunch of little underground shops have sprung up. That's how I got by before I ended up here. Me and my friends jacked domestic bots and chopped them up to build watchdogs. Vic struggled not to look surprised. This 13-year-old got by stealing robots and turning them into bodyguards? All was trying to drive all the little shops out of business, one way or another, and corner the market. Create a watchdog empire here in Chicago. Using hostages to build them, Vic said. Like I said, she'll do whatever it takes. Ruthless is her middle name. She pretty much owns this part of the city. The police do what she tells them. The gangs don't dare cross her. I'm surprised you haven't heard of her. Yeah, well, we don't get out much, Vic said. We've been trying hard to keep to ourselves. He looked around. Not that it did much good. In the other room, Tara cried on, her voice growing hoarse. You a Brumby? East asked. What's a Brumby? East gave him a look. Street kid, you know, an orphan. Oh yeah, our mom died 8 months ago. How about you? I've been on the street for 3 years. I grew up a couple blocks from here. My folks kicked me out after Dad lost his job. They said they couldn't afford to feed all of us, so they kicked out me and 2 brothers and kept my 2 sisters. Vic fumbled, nearly dropped the miniature socket wrench he was using. That's harsh. How'd they decide who went and who stayed? East shrugged. Just who'd been good and who hadn't. She said it matter-of-factly, but she had to look away when she said it. Vic bet it still hurt. In the next room, Dixie shouted, You want something to cry about? You don't work, you don't eat. How do you like that? East must have seen him flinch. You need to talk to her sister, she said. If she gives him grief, they're going to make her life miserable. Yours, too. Talk to his sister? Things had been different. He might have laughed at that. She's autistic. When she gets like that, it's like a switch was flipped in her head. She can't help it. You might as well tell the wind not to blow. Although she managed to hold it off when they were in the dump with Tiny looming over them, maybe she's getting control of that switch. The watchdog clinked past them, all jet black steel except for yellow eyes, so big he probably couldn't have fit through a normal-sized door. It didn't look that much like a grizzly. Its mouth was much bigger and wider than a grizzly's, its limbs leaner, and it had no ears. But Vic had a habit of thinking about watchdogs in terms of the animal they resembled most. The grizzly disappeared through a double-wide doorway into the back of the shop. Vic wondered how many of them Miss Alba had. That is the end of Chapter 6, so we'll keep on going tomorrow with some more reading. So again, every day at noon, come on by. We'll keep on reading Watchdog, and then when we're done with Watchdog, we'll move on to a next book as we keep on our social distancing. School's still going on, just at your house. So y'all be safe, take care of each other, and remember, Rangers of the way.